This is the first session of today, which we're calling Healthcare 3.0, following up, I think, nice from Michael's talk. And I wanted to just set a little bit of context and be a little interactive here related to some of the questions I asked. So what is Healthcare 3.0? I mean, Peter Attia has a definition. A lot of people have had different definitions. I'm going to start by just saying what I want, and then I want to hear what you guys want, actually. So what do I want? I want all of my data in one place where I don't have to do anything. I don't have to plug in a USB cord. I don't have to call my doctor. I don't have to fax my doctor. I don't have to get permission from somebody. I just want it automatic. I want it one time when I set it up, it's just going to pull all of my data automatically in one place. I want to be able to share that data with whoever I want. Personally, I would just make it available to everybody, completely freely available. Anybody can download it, including my photo, not my social security number maybe. I want AI analysis of the data with recommendations, real-time adjustment, and if there's a medical doctor involved, I hope he's in Puerto Rico in a small office and he's checking a box and I never actually have to talk to him. I want a menu of longevity interventions that are categorized based on how much evidence they have behind them and recommended to me, but this is gold standard placebo-controlled trial, Michael Snyder approves. This is experimental, pretty cool, might work, might not. Brian Johnson's trying it. But I can decide for myself my risk tolerance, right? But it's telling me, it's categorizing things. And then I want an easy interface for doing N of 1 experiments. So if I want to try a supplement, it's going to tell me what data I should collect before, it's going to monitor throughout, and it's going to analyze it and tell me the result. I also want to be able to do this as part of a community. I would like it to suggest to me, there's other people that are trying this thing, why don't you guys all do it together and do it placebo-controlled? And it'll manage that all for me. And then the results can even be published and I'll be a co-author. I would like to be able to purchase all of the things I need. It could be food delivery, could be diagnostics, could be devices, could be actual prescription medications. Again, there's a doctor in a room checking a box. The AI was the one that actually made the recommendation, and I went along with it. And for compliance reasons, there was an MD somewhere involved. Maybe eventually not, if the AI wins the competition 10 years in a row and we finally let the AI just decide. And then I want to schedule procedures. Like for me, going to a hospital shouldn't be this arduous thing where you're going through all these layers and permissions and paperwork. I just want to say oh, you need a colonoscopy. I schedule it. It's like going to LabCorp to get your blood drawn. You just show up, they do it, and you're out. That's it. The hospital should just be like LabCorp, plasmapheresis, whatever. And then I want at-home measuring, and preferably non-invasive whenever possible. So I know there's 2 startups working on miniaturized MRIs where you can just literally just put your finger in it and it can actually measure the levels of things in your blood. There's spectroscopic ways to do it too. But I mean, blood draws at home. I mean, why not? And there's I heard of there's CGMs now, but there's also ones that can measure multiple things at a time. So yeah, I want to be able to do that at home. So I want to ask you guys now, does anyone here disagree with any of these things? Who here would want that? Put up your hand. Would want that. I think that's...
Are we raising our hands for part or for all?
Who would want all of this?
The last one's tough for MRI.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just saying would want it, doesn't... Yeah. Okay. I mean, that can be a procedure that you schedule to the MRI. I just mean there's the miniaturized ones that are not for your whole body. It's actually just to measure levels of things. So who here disagrees with something on this list? Who here? Okay, we got Nico, do you want a microphone? I guess I'm going to be walking around.
I agree with almost all of that. And the only part that I disagree with is the AI. Okay. Because I believe it's very important to have the doctor, the human doctor, and the trust that you can have with the human doctor. And the AI right now has zero understanding of what it's analyzing, and biological data needs understanding.
Yeah.
So I would like to have a doctor in there.
Okay. Yeah, I'd say I agree with that. I would probably want the doctor and the AI in parallel until the AI has been proven to be better than the doctor, which is the competition that I mentioned. Anyone else disagree with something? I knew Carl would disagree with something, at least one thing.
Yeah, I also disagreed that I didn't want the MD to just check a box. But I want to talk about the first bullet, which is all my data in one place. Yeah, that would be nice, but there's fundamental trade-offs that, new things come along, and we're at a state of science where new things are coming along rapidly. And just there's a fundamental trade-off about, incorporating things into central stores versus newness. And I want some of my data to be the newest thing when I want to adopt it, and that's automatically going to not necessarily be all in the one place right away, I think. So I think there's always going to be heterogeneity to the data. You want to always start to incorporate it centrally, but if you require it all to be central, I think you're limiting yourself to not
well, I want,
the adopter.
Yeah, I think what I mean is I want the option for like any service that generates data, I want to be able to have it pulled in. And I want that to be low friction.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I'm just maybe asking for clarification from your side too. I mean, one thing that we should definitely include in something like this is genetic and also even transcriptomic data, right?
Yeah.
And that's basically the most personal thing you have. So sharing that should have its limits, I guess, or at least being privacy oriented, you should be very careful with what you put out there. Also, given that you only have one genome. So yeah, I wonder how you kind of would shape something like that.
I mean, yeah, personally, I don't care. I would just make it all available. But you could have by different data type, you could choose whether you want to share it or not, whether you want it anonymized or not.
Yeah, but that's before you agree to share.
Yeah, but I want a box that just says share everything. I don't want to look at it. I don't care.
Just, enough warnings so that
yeah.
they're sure you said yes.
Yeah.
Another thing for the wish list. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
So, another point on the wish list. I don't want to have to make so many decisions about it. Health is complex, and maybe I have energy to make 150 or 200 decisions in a day. And I want this to ideally run on a trustworthy autopilot. So yeah, don't just present the options to me, but deliver it and give me the opt-out instead of the opt-in.
Okay. Cool. All right.
I've got another one. So I probably should have started with this one. I think this is an important thing that I actually want to talk about a lot today. In the third bullet that you have, I'm really, really worried by the board of experts.
Well, so that's why I included three things: a board of experts, an AI, and then a community aspect. So the community, community notes on Twitter, but maybe that's not exactly the right model, but some form of...
So I think you're right that there's going to be a board of experts,
yeah.
and there's maybe going to be multiple boards of experts, and I just want to point out that, and this is something that makes me wary of efforts like the Healthy Longevity Medical Society that also exists in this area, is that there's debates within the field, and boards of experts are inevitably going to be biased on some of those debates, and different patients may have different biases. And so I think that's an interesting issue that we'll have to deal with in the field.
I think we're about the same time, so I'll hand it to you later. One thing that I think would be very nice is some kind of estimate of the risk of potential things that you could do, right? So I like the concept of millimorts in general, but more in general, you could say, well, sometimes, there's a trade-off between how optimal or how, optimized your habits are or your health is, and sometimes you want to, just go out and eat pizza, right? You know, you necessarily, it's not going to be good for you, right? But a little bit of an idea of, well, this is going to have a, a small impact or a larger impact or larger impact in your overall
like
health.
smoke a cigarette might be like red flag, eat a piece of pizza like once a week might be like yellow flag.
Yeah, but I mean, if everything else in your life is good, right? Like, and you really feel like smoking a cigar sometime, like maybe it's not the end of the world, right? But I think like humans in general are very bad at judging,
the relative risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like actually the most dangerous thing you did was probably drive here today.
If you drove a motorcycle, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to follow up on Carl's point / worry about 3. I think whether or not I'd be okay with this depends heavily on how centralized it is. So like to take an example from diabetes field, American Diabetes Association for years and years recommended a low-fat, high-carb diet. Probably, I don't know how much damage to human health that caused because they were the central authority that everybody was listening to. There's lots of cases of that across medicine, and especially right now in longevity where there are no really good interventions and there's a whole, you could easily end up with like entrenched or frozen consensus. If we weren't careful with
No, I agree. And I think the idea of having maybe multiple like different sources and you can say like, you can get input from multiple.
It's just very dangerous, especially like.
Well, the alternative is
risk aversion.
The problem is that the alternative, if you just don't have any recommendations, is that it boils down to just what we have right now, which is anecdotal. Like you have to read all the literature yourself and decide for yourself. That's not feasible.
Until there are actually like really strong, well-evidenced interventions.
Well, I think Michael presented a lot of evidence for a lot of different things. I think we have a lot of evidence right now, and you can go too far in the sort of libertarian sort of way of thinking about it too. Both ways.
I just want to follow up on this point. So I think
you can ignore people's advice. You're welcome to, right?
So the definition of MD, I think, should change. Because as of today, because it's historical, because of the technology that was like developed 30 years ago, the expert was a person that studied books about making people in one group. There was a grouping strategy. So I think if you implement AI, which I wouldn't substitute with MMD, but if you implement like AI with MMD, you are generating a new figure and the expertise comes from the data. And the medical doctor is kind of like guiding and driving them. So I think the two things, so the expert can be, of course, the doctor based on an output that is coming not from something that developed 50 years ago, but from new data.
There should be an expert interpreter of
I think
data.
I see AI in different fields like this. You need a supervision of a human mind, but the power that the machine has is beyond. So you cannot have an expert that can handle data as good as a machine.
I think a lot of the time the medical doctor is actually sort of a therapist in a way too. Like, right? Like they're just like a person to talk to.
I think if we actually built this, it would change a lot of how the typical person makes decisions. I would like some sort of super advisor where my biological assets are not separate from my financial assets. Like not a banker, not a doctor, kind of a hybrid where, I'm making decisions about my like not just my lifestyle currently, but potentially like my biological future and where I'm traveling, where I'm living. And it would be optimal if all the things that are most important to me are kind of funneling through the same expert individual or institution.
Maybe to add a little more resolution to bullet 3, a lot of information is contextual, or responses are contextual. So, if you eat certain foods, you can suppress glucose spikes versus others. So it's a matter of the more comprehensive the data sets are, the more you'll be able to break them down into the proper context. I recognize that getting some information is better than none, but ultimately you want.
To bullet 1, I think it'd be nice to also have the ability to potentially sell your data in a way to like incentivize yourself to collect more of it. Like the more we talked about that, there's all these like disparate services you can use, but as you collect all of that and put it into one place, and you're actually getting compensated for providing a more comprehensive data set to potential researchers, it's both more valuable to them that you have it, and then it also subsidizes the cost that it takes for you to collect all of that data yourself.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting monetization schemes here. One of the problems is that I think in order to get enough data for most projects, like the per person amount that they could pay somebody is actually not very high. Unless you're like, unusual. Maybe you have like an unusual genome or an unusual condition, and then your data might actually be more valuable. Or if they want, like, maybe they can just like use this platform to recruit for trials. And like you can get a notification that says, hey, we'd like to recruit you for a trial. We'll pay you $300, yes or no.
What happens if you just did some genetic therapy and your employer has access to that information and they see you did?
I don't know. I've never had an employer, so I don't.
Well, a person of power, the person that decides your health insurance, etc. Say, hey, you made a choice.
So we need a legal framework to protect people against discrimination.
No, I mean, that falls under privacy options, right? It's just baked in there.
Yeah. Well, privacy is one way to do it, but another was just like non-discrimination.
I also want to get everything without prescription, like whatever I came up with.
Yeah, I think I kind of meant to put that here, but yeah, prescriptions.
Non-prescription.
What?
No prescriptions.
Oh, you want to get rid of the...
Yeah.
Well,
why would I?
I think we could definitely... I think it would make sense to reduce the number of things that require prescriptions. There's a lot of things that
Well,
now...
there's like a pretty short list, really. Most of the things here in States is
like
it's
I
just
wouldn't
crazy.
say that you should be able to buy like chemotherapy agents off the shelf necessarily in Safeway, but like...
But how would you harm yourself? Who in their right mind would take it? I mean, something that is qualified as like
famous politicians have recommended
addictive drugs, then yes. The majority of it is just like, go for it, whatever.
Yeah, so more just personal.
Yeah,
I agree.
Aaron had something to say.
Yeah, I have another one also.
Oh.
Here, I have another one actually. It's another perspective. It aligns a bit of later also what I'm trying to say in my talk, as well as also what I've seen the last day. Also to somehow incentivize not just maybe that I will be possible to say certain things, but also to enhance actually development, that there is somehow a possibility in terms of IP sharing, so that we as a whole actually industry somehow could advance much faster. But there, since we're living in a capitalism, needs to have an incentive structure in place. Because I think that holds a lot of innovation back with patents and so on.
That might be outside, that's like, yeah, that's a more industry level thing, but I agree.
I would say prescription is the only thing that holds you back from affordable medicine here in the States. Because you can reach out through internet to a third, you can just reach out to an English-speaking doctor from former USSR country. It will be extremely cheap. You will get good enough advice, and then go and buy anything that you were prescribed, like not legally though. And this is the only thing that holds you here.
Yeah, well, I think that applies to more than prescriptions. It's also just like medical procedures. Like you don't even know what the price of a procedure is until a month later when they send you the bill, the way it works right now. So transparent pricing, I think.
Oh yeah, transparent pricing. And
all right, so that's, I'm not sure how we're doing on time, but instead of adding more ideas to the list, does anyone disagree with any of things on here now?
I think we are in this industry that's constantly on top of mind for us, but most of the time it doesn't need to be or shouldn't be, because our bodies are very adaptive systems that do the work often on their own. So sometimes we can actually do damage by worrying too much, or sort of putting ourselves into a state of mind where we're constantly like worrying or doing interventions.
Oh, I mean, I was just, I'm not convinced on three in particular in our current medical environment. I don't think it's the case that you can just ignore the recommendations, because per your point, we require prescriptions, we require doctors' permission for so many things that if you get entrenched consensus, it's not like you can just ignore that. You can get really hamstrung by the rest of the medical community.
The legal reason, not the medical reason.
Oh yeah.
The prescriptions.
100% agree. If what you want is implemented, then I have no concern with 3.
Very minor and specific thing, but every time I hear like Dr. Snyder speak, I get really, really enthused about wearables, and I like buy a bunch, and inevitably I don't use them. And I think because of sensory issues, like I have sensory issues, right? So and also ADHD. So like I will lose it, or I will take it off because my skin is hurting, and then I will lose it. And that's happened to me with like so many Oura Rings, smartwatches. Like I've lost all of them, or I took them off because it hurt too much to have them touching my skin during a sensory episode. So like I want sensory aware wearables that can, give me this data that I so desperately want, that I'm so inspired by. But like for people like me who have sensory issues, like we just can't. Every single thing on the market currently hurts too much to wear. I need something else. So I think keeping in mind like people with ADHD might lose their Oura Rings, or people with sensory issues might find the Whoop too painful to have on their skin. So like, sensory aware wearables would be, I think, a very exciting thing for me. So Dr. Snyder, if you think of any, please let me know. That would be a cool thing to have.
Mark, I can add some. So I think this is all great, but none of it's going to work if you don't have the time for it. So all of this needs to function in the context of our daily lives, and also in the context of our conscious decisions of maybe I'm going to live less healthy for this period, but I'm taking this decision. So what I would really like to have is maybe like a scheduler on top of this that takes my calendar and says, okay, this is what you want to do in work or life. This is what you want to do in health. This, so you can actually make it work and implement it and have it as a habit that you are going to stick to.
I got so.
I have more of a comment overall on it. I'm super excited about like this whole idea of healthcare 3.0. Like as we can see from like just hearing everyone's opinion, there's like thing to add again. So I'd be kind of curious if after this we could collect it and maybe say like vote on like 3 things that you'd be like most interested in, because like lists just could keep adding up, and it's then hard to focus on like things that people are most excited about or have the most consensus to want to be pursuing. So
I'll
I
make
think
this into a poll and send it out in the WhatsApp group.
that'd be fun, like a vote for top 3 of these.
For which ones you care about.
Yeah.
We're writing the specification list for Superpower right now. I think they're coming after us.
We also have the workshops,
Yeah, the workshops is a good place for this.
If you want like what wearables they use and how, then you should.
Okay. I think we might be at time or even overtime, so I think I should probably call it here. And we can talk about it more in the workshops.